Hey, good morning or good evening, wherever you are, whatever time of day you're watching this. So I'm continuing on in this series, what I think is going to become a series. This is video number 2 of talking about a health journal. I've done one. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, go find it. It gives a bit of an introduction. Now, the one thing I've realized is I can't make short videos. I tend to talk quite a bit and minutes go by very fast. So I just hope these are helpful and encouraging in some way, because that would be good. That would be good. Now, so in terms of a health journal, I did write down a few of the things to do. And I'll sort of read them out and explain a few of them, and then some of the further sort of instructions or how to, I'll move actually to even another video as well. So I think the first thing that we all have to do for ourselves is define what health is. So within your health journal, just jot down, like, what is health? Now that's going to be different for all of us. We don't want the pat answers, to be fit and weigh the right amount and things like this. Like, you want it very personalized. So for me, for 2018, if I was to determine what health is for me for this year, it would basically be a constancy of stretching and strengthening exercises through all of my days, no matter where I am. That would sort of be the thing for me. A little bit bigger picture than that, health is, for me, is about mobility, ease of movement, and it's about the right size. I sit on the backs of, motorbikes. I climb into very crowded taxis, at the minivans, 20 people in them. I want to be a size that can do these things. So that would be part of my health. Eating in a way that is good for my body. And again, I'm not even going to say what that is, because, like, for me personally, because again, for each one of us, we really have to come to know our body. I think the biggest thing about our health and well-being is that we just need to get it who we are. We want to connect our values to our physical experience in the world, right? So my values are different than your values. We might have the same, and even if we had the same values, we would have a different priority on those values. So again, your journey with your health, which of course includes your sleeping, your eating, your exercise, what else does it include? Your resting, that's going to be a different thing for you than it is for me, and vice versa. So the most important thing is that we begin to really just think about, what is health? What would health be for me? What's the definition for me? And so that would be something I would say to you. It's just begin to think about that. For some of us, we want to lose weight. Other people are going to need to gain weight. Some of us want to, some people want to gain more muscle mass. Others of us would want more flexibility. Now, not that those are two opposite things. In fact, they're usually interconnected, right? But again, it's about, well, what's really the priority for you? And then even what's the priority for you at this time? We could be in pretty good shape and still want to sort of add something or expand on something for ourselves each year. Or if it's all a mess, none of it seems to be in any sort of way being managed at this time, then we also don't want to get overwhelmed with everything that we would have on our list that we might want to do. We want to pick, one or two things. Like, what would a movement in health be for me this year? And then answer that kind of a question. So we want to define what our health is. The second thing I have that I wrote down, and actually I think this would almost be, well, it's top of all the other things that I can think of, is to be loved, is to come into love, is to love yourself. Now, a number of years ago, I would have scoffed at this. I would have thought this was crazy, but I've really come to see in the last few years that love changes how we live. It changes our relationship with others, obviously, but it changes our relationship with ourselves. And so it changes our relationship with our health as well. Right? Like where maybe we've been in dismay or, you know, broken down in our, maybe we're in despair, right? When we're despairing, we don't do anything. Oh, whatever. Doesn't matter. But then love shows up, or we enter into love, or we realize we're loved, or we allow God to love us more, and all of a sudden things start to matter. Because life is coming back into us. And so then where we would have given over in dismay or despair or apathy or passivity, we begin to take on something new, and things start to matter, and we start to respond and to act in different ways. So love is huge. Be loved, come into love, allow yourself to be loved. And it's a kind of a intangible one. It's hard to know, well, what does that even mean? About 1.5 years ago, the Lord had said to me, you know, Cyndy, I want you to let me love you more. And at the time I thought, well, what? But so I just sort of opened myself up to the Lord loving me more. I can't even tell you exactly what I did, other than there was a shift within me in some way. And I began to let God love me more. And the changes that have come from this have been astounding. There's been just this increase in an expanse and a bounty coming into my life, replacing sort of the things that had been lost, replacing the things that had been lost in a way that I wasn't expecting. But somehow in order to shift into that newness and to shift into wholeness and other layers of being healed, I had to become vulnerable enough to be loved, something like that. Anyway, so I would actually put this as part of your health journal, like be loved. And so the next thing, make a plan. Now these are in no particular order. I just sort of jotted them out because I knew that if I didn't jot them out, I wouldn't actually remember half of them, because I've never really actually talked too much about this before, so it's not uppermost in my mind. But we do want to then tangibly make a plan. Now, if you saw my other video about the health journal, I said, you know, we don't make ourselves promises. We don't say, oh, I'm going to do this year, and feel it in such a way that our brain already thinks it's happened. So we don't do that, but we can still make a plan. And there's a bit of a difference. Now, a plan is like a loosely held idea. It's sort of the tangible thing. Well, so what do I want to be eating? Okay, let's make a list of the things I do want to be eating. What things do I know I want to eliminate from my health journey? Okay, maybe 6 hours of sitting at the computer in a row. I need to break that up. I need to do something else. So we do want to make a plan and think through sort of what's working for us at this point in time and what isn't working for us. And what we want to do is we want to remove a sense of guilt or shame or condemnation. And we just want to ask ourselves, well, what's working right now in terms of myself and my health, and what isn't working? Fairly simple question. And so then the things that are working, we want to continue. And the things that are not working, we want to replace with something that will work for us. So when I talk about making a plan, it's that sort of a thing. Just technically speaking, what do we want it to sort of look like? And again, this isn't like a binding contract. It's really just a brainstorming. And often the plan, again, it's very particular to each one of us because our schedules are very different. You know, the time of day when you eat breakfast is going to be very different than the time of day that I eat breakfast, and vice versa, things like this. So part of our plan is, well, you know, what do I need to do in the morning first off, and what would come second, and what would come third. It's not even about time frames, but about rhythm and order, and what's sort of, again, what works and what doesn't work, and just to start jotting some of that out. Remembering that this kind of thing, it's always a living document. It's always going to be adjusted and changed and tweaked. And it's meant to just set some things down as a way of possibility and the things we would like to see. So that would be the third thing. So first, I define health. What is it for you? And then come into love, however that might mean. Maybe for your loving yourself. I won't continue on about that. But number 3, make a plan. So just brainstorm. What do you want to see? What would you want in terms of your health? For some of you, it's going to be more flexibility. For some of you, it's going to be more strength. For some of you, it's going to be weight loss. For some of you, it's going to be, I just want to walk around the block once a day, every day. Like, make that the plan, right? We don't want to put too much into these plans, but when I say make a plan, again, it's just a really, like, what's working, what isn't working, and just sort of jot some of that down. The next thing I wrote down here, number 4, would be vision forward. Now, there's a number of different ways that we can do this, and this would be something that I'll kind of do in more videos, because these are I have some specific coaching processes and tools that I have in my tool belt, and I'll share those with you. But basically, visioning forward, what we want to do is we want to fill the spaces with intention. So, because some of our plan and some of what's not working are things that we're going to want to remove, right, or stop doing. But our minds can't go forward on what not to do, because when we're thinking about what not to do, we're just going to keep doing it because that's what we're thinking about. Like, that's where our thoughts are driving us toward that not doing, which, right? See, it doesn't work. So we want to fill the spaces with what we do want. So the visioning forward is just creating pictures and awareness in our mind's eye of what we might want it to be, of what we do want it to be. And again, this isn't about solidifying, like, making promises before it's happened, but it is about giving us something to go toward. And so that's really valuable, and I have a number of tools on that. The other thing that comes to my mind is in terms of stress. When we come to a health journal, we really want to assess stress. Now, all of us have different coping capability for stress. What I mean is, some people are really low key, and then other people are wired a bit tighter. You know what I mean? And there's no right or wrong to either one. Again, it's about you and what's stressful to you, and then what's your optimum processing through that, or life rhythm, I would say. Some can handle more faster rhythm. Some need a really steady, constant rhythm. Some people do a big kind of push to something, and then down to resting, and then another big push, and then down to resting, and other people just need a really constant thing. So these rhythms determine how we respond to our situations, because these situations either work with our natural rhythm or they work against our natural rhythm. And that's a part of stress, or what could be stress, right? If what we're living doesn't match who we are. So we want to assess stress. And then we also want to assess stress in terms of the things that aren't working. So, relationships are a big thing. If relationships are out of whack, that's a big stress. If we are dealing with chronic pain, that's a big stress. What else? Too much exercise. If you're trying to get healthy with a ton of cardiovascular exercise, and your body isn't a cardiovascular exercise body, you're going to be adding stress. I remember myself, so this would be true of me back, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago. I was, going to go to the gym, and I was going to, go on one of those, elliptical machines, and I was going to run every day or a couple times a week and do this exercise is supposed to be so good for you. Well, I gained weight. Like, it did not do what I needed it to do, because actually to my body, that's stress on my body. Like, I respond much better to weight training, weight strengthening exercises, and stretching. Cardiovascular creates stress on my body, and I actually gain weight from that. because stress, if I understand this correctly, I may not have this completely right, but stress releases cortisone, like our body to deal with stress releases cortisone to deal with stress, right? Which is good, like that's a necessary thing. But if we have too much stress, then too much cortisone is released, and that built up over a long period of time actually creates weight gain. So so stress is something to really consider in terms of our health. And of course, so physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and then relationally, stress is a big deal, and we need to be paying attention to that, and we need to know what our natural rhythms are and what they're not. For myself, I'm a really high-paced person. I have a lot of energy. So at one time in my life, I was very exhausted, and people would tell me, well, Cyndy, you need to slow down if you're exhausted. And of course, I tried that for a time. Makes sense, right? But actually, for me, I hadn't even yet found my rhythm. It was like I was going on a long trip in second gear. I was like exhausted. So once I found my rhythm, which is a much faster gear than what most other people have, now I'm good, because I'm not trying to go too slow, which is exhausting to me. So, but then there's going to be people who are the complete opposite, right? So we really have to, in fact, probably most people are opposite, but we have to really figure out again what works for us, right? In terms of rhythm and in terms of stress, and what is stressful and what isn't stressful. I can handle a lot of risk and a lot of unknown. Other people have a very low threshold for risk and for what's unknown. And so again, you have to pay attention to these things and take care of yourself, and sort of order your life in a way that isn't going to rob you of your health, whether that's physically or emotionally, spiritually, relationally, right? So this is really important. Stress is a big deal. Now, I want to say, next thing I had written down here is that we're interconnected. You know, our bodies will reveal the state of our heart and mind, sort of what's going on for us. We're not separate people. Our emotions are connected to our physical bodies are connected to our emotions. Our relationships influence how we feel, and which influences kind of, if we're not aware, it influences what we're eating on a daily basis, right? And why we're doing what, or, you know, our sleeping, how does that play into all of this? And it's a really good book, actually, by Gabor Mate, When the Body Says No. If you're interested in reading about the connection between our emotional health and our physical health, that's a great book to read. Very thorough, very backed by research and the latest sciences. So that's a really great book. I read that a number of years ago. In terms of stress, I remember when I read that book, it affirmed to me everything that I had already been sensing, that the pain that I was carrying was in fact making me sick. The relational pain that had become compressed within me for, you know, a decade or more, was making me ill. And I created a plan and a way of changing that pain, of no longer carrying that pain, and it's made all the difference in my physical body. So we're interconnected. So we want to ask ourselves, like, what do our health habits say about us? If we were an archaeologist and we dropped into our own life today, and this archaeologist would look around and, okay, Cyndy has some black tea here. Doesn't have any cream in it. It does have some honey in it. Okay, well, what does this say about Cyndy? What does it say about her in contrast to a year ago when it would have had sugar and cream in it? Oh, maybe there's some progress here, right? The food in the fridge or in the cupboards, what does that say about you or I? the way we eat with people. What does this say about us, right? So we can kind of play a bit of an exploratory thing. If we didn't know us, right, had no context for our lives, just dropped in and found what we found in relation to this person's health, what would it tell us? So this can be a hard thing to do, because it can be a hard thing to do. But it's a worthwhile thing to think about and to possibly do and ask ourselves. The other thing I had written down here was that we need to be willing to look at worst case scenarios. In terms of our health, it's connected in a social way to many other people, or at least a few other people usually. Often the rituals, they say our lives are just a compilation of our rituals, right? Now, for instance, what I mean, or when I say that, what I mean is, for instance, I love tea. So I used to have 3 or 4, big cups of tea every day. I'm a writer, right? So I'm often sitting. I'm thinking, usually in a place where I can get tea, either at home or at a cafe. And so in a cup of tea like this, I would have had 3 sugar cubes and about 1/8 of a cup of cream. Now, it's no surprise that when I stopped doing this, I lost 20 pounds. But anyways, so I love my tea, and I love my sugar and my cream and my tea. And I've been doing this for years and years and years. What I realized was that, one of the things that actually helped me stop doing that was, when I had to for my health, but I realized that it was almost more the ritual of making the tea. So when the first thing I did to kind of remove all that sugar and cream and the habit of that from my life was I would make the tea and I would have a couple sips, and then I would let it go cold and I would throw it out. Because actually I realized it wasn't even the tea so much that I was drinking that I was enjoying. I would enjoy boiling the water, putting my ingredients in, putting the water in, stirring it, and then holding that nice warm cup in my hands. That was actually the part I really liked. So when I realized this, then I realized, well, okay, so I could still do this and not put the sugar and the cream in it, right? I could change the ritual. And then changing the ritual changes the impact in my life and on my body. And literally, stop putting cream and sugar in my tea, I lost 20 pounds. So, that's a fairly simple thing to do, and yet it took me a year of contemplating it, because I knew that's what the problem was. It took me a year to get to the point where I was willing to make that change. And then I made it bit by bit. I started with, I'm trying to remember now, I think I took the cream out first and kept the sugar, or one way. I slowly kind of weaned myself off of this, right? But I still have trouble with it. On my, coming home from overseas over Christmas, oh my gosh, I was enjoying my cream. But I'm still not putting sugar in. I'm just putting honey in. But I had gotten to the point where I wasn't putting honey in. Right now, I'm back to getting used to no cream, so I'm still putting the honey in it. But again, sort of these bit by bit things. But if we understand the ritual, what is the real ritual? So in terms of eating, a lot of our eating is about social interaction with people. And where we get stuck is when our social interactions or our relationships are based on common rituals. So common rituals around food are hard to break because it feels like we're breaking relationship, right? And not only do we have to change and adjust, but the people around us have to change and adjust, and they may not want to do that. And because we're redefining the relationship. So if I have a relationship and every day part of what we do is we sit and we have a big cup of tea with cream and sugar in it, then what happens if all of a sudden I start saying, no, I'm not going to have that? Then the other person may or may not respond well, right? Or if we're used to sitting down to a full supper of meat and potatoes and gravy and buns, and what if we're trying to cut out some of that stuff? What if we're realizing that all of that stuff in our belly at the same time isn't doing us any good, and we want to change that, then not only do we have to see a way forward to change our own habit, our own ritual, but we're actually risking to change the relationship. So when it comes to our health, now this would be true of kind of any part of our health, right? The rhythm of our life, what we're doing, what we're not doing, what we're eating, what we're not eating, what's our exercise, what's our non-exercise. If we bond with our partner over watching TV in the evening, and what if now I realize I need to be walking instead of, I need to take 1 hour and go for a walk around the block. And what if my partner doesn't want to do that? Then in order for me to reach for that and to go after that, I actually have to risk breaking relationship. So this is probably the other biggest key thing about health, is that we have to take it on for ourselves, and we have to be willing to risk loss. Because we can't guarantee how other people are going to respond, or if they're going to go forward with us into the change, or if they're even going to appreciate the change, right? We often define ourselves according to our relationships and what other people, and we've gotten used to other people a certain way, and so sometimes somebody will lose a lot of weight, or they take control of their eating, and that might threaten me if I've been in relationship with this person a long time and I don't like these changes, right? Vice versa. So this is probably the hardest part of health, is that in order to take on health for ourselves, we actually sometimes have to stand against the very ones we love the most. And that's the hardest thing of reclaiming our life. But it is something we have to grapple with. And we have to ask ourselves, am I willing to risk loss in order to gain greater mobility, or greater freedom, or a healthier body? And, quite frankly, if we're going to have a healthier body, if we're going to have greater health, the answer has to be yes. If we're not willing to risk loss, we won't reach for more. We won't make any changes. So that's a bit of a sad truth about that. So that's actually something that can really, a health journal can really help with this, right? To journal, to record, to work through, to process emotions around changing relationships and shifting rhythms and different rituals. And it can help us, though, be informed, be more self-aware of what's going on, and then we can actually communicate that to the people around us, right? We can say things like, I know it's really important for us to enjoy this meal together, but I just learned that I can't eat this much food. Like, thank you so much for preparing this. I'm not going to eat enough for you. You need to know this. But I still appreciate what you've done, and we can still enjoy our time around this table. So the health journal, in terms of expectations and relationships and changing rituals, can really help us to become, again, more self-aware. It can give us a place to practice writing out, practice saying, thinking through the things we might say to people, as a way of maintaining relationship even as rituals and habits change. So I have no idea how long I've talked for. I'll do another one. I have some tools, of course, but I'll save that for another video. So this was video number 2 of health journaling, and I'll do some more. It's fun to be sharing this stuff with you guys, actually. I've been doing stuff like this for years, and I don't talk about it a lot, but I'm glad to be sharing it. So I hope it's blessing you, and that something in all of that is an encouragement. Blessings. Thanks.